So our question's from Kate, and her question is, I just got engaged and I'm starting to think about planning my wedding, but I have no idea where to start. Do you have any advice for budgeting and planning for this exciting event? Budgeting for a wedding can be difficult because there's no one size fits all for weddings. Everybody's is going to be different. So it could be hugely different based on the number of people that you have. So if you have just a small intimate wedding with your best friends, that's going to be crazy different from having a wedding with 400 people and your parents' best friends and your neighbors and people you don't even know. So one of the biggest things in deciding on your budget and planning for your wedding is to determine who's going to pay. Traditionally, the bride's parents have paid for weddings, but that's been changing recently, and it's more and more common for other people to pay for the wedding, whether it's, the groom's family or yourselves or friends or whoever. So it's definitely important to figure out who's going to pay for that, where the money's going to come from. So you need to talk with your fiance also and set your expectations and also what you guys are comfortable spending. So a lot of people planning weddings now are contributing to it themselves, if not paying for the whole thing. So you guys need to set your expectations. If you want to have a 400-person wedding, then you can't do it on a $10,000 budget. So you just need to make sure that you're on the same page and are comfortable with what you're planning for. If your parents are going to help, you also want to know how much is going to come from them. Sometimes they want to give you maybe a hard number, or they'll just write you a check, or maybe they just want to pay for a particular expense, like your dad's going to pay for the dress, or they're going to pay for the ceremony and reception, but they're not going to pay for if you want a band or a cake or the flowers or things like that. So once you have the amount, it's important to establish your budget and prioritize where you want to spend that money. There's a lot of things to consider when you're creating this budget. For example, the venue, the officiant, ceremony fees, catering, the dress, buying and renting tuxes or suits, the invitations and stationery, photographer, videographer, if you want to do a band or have a DJ, flowers, decorations, gifts for the wedding party, getting your hair and makeup done, tips for the vendors, transportation, it can go on and on. The average cost, according to the Knot in 2016 of a wedding, was $35,000. So these things can get very expensive very quickly. So once you've established your budget and you know where you're going to spend what and on how much on each thing, you need to start saving for it. So obviously the longer time that you have to save, the more you're going to be able to save. So you could consider having a longer engagement in order to save up for the things that you really want. So really you should set a goal for yourself and reserve a certain amount of your income each month to help kind of reach that goal. And you should also save a little bit extra beyond your budget just for the things that are going to come up that you don't expect. We would say save 5 to 10% extra just for those extra things that you may not see coming. So let's say your parents give you that $15,000 check to use towards your wedding. You should set that aside in a separate account so that you know exactly what that money is and it's not mingled with your own money. You could use credit cards to pay for all of the things that you're spending so that you'll earn some rewards for what you're spending on, whether it's, points or mileage for your honeymoon or cash back. Just make sure that if you are using credit cards that you don't charge anything that you can't repay within 30 days. That you're not incurring the interest or fees, unless of course you have a 0% interest rate credit card, that sort of thing, but still you need to make sure that you're able to pay it off within the time frame of that 0% rate. When you're budgeting, you can always look to cut costs in different ways to help save a little bit. You could choose flowers that are in season versus having ones flown in from somewhere that aren't available locally. You can choose a low-cost venue that, something like a public park that you don't have to pay for. Venues can be very expensive. Also getting married on non-peak days. So like instead of a typical Saturday wedding, you could get married on a Friday or a Sunday. You could always skip the champagne toast and also be careful to watch your overspending. So if you budget $2,500 for a photographer and they say, well, my fee is $3,000, but you really like that photographer, and you say that every single time that you try and book something, then you're going to end up losing a lot of money out of that budget quickly before you realize it. Be realistic about DIY. So if you're a do-it-yourself bride and you say, well, I'm just going to make all the decorations and I'll make my own bouquets, realistically, you're going to be stressed out anyways, and doing that yourself could end up costing you just way too much time and even money for the supplies for these things. You can also limit your spending on other things, so skip the Starbucks, don't go out to eat as much. Instead of going on big dates with your fiance, you guys could just stay in and Netflix and chill for the night. Be a lot cheaper, and you can save that extra money that you would have spent to put towards your wedding. You also really need to put a system in place for yourself to help stay on your budget. There's a lot of tools online that you can use. If you just Google budgeting for weddings, there's all kinds of spreadsheets out there and checklists that have different generic assumptions, and you can just go and use these as a guide and change them to your own circumstances. And make sure that you're tracking as you go. Pay attention to your due dates, mark down when you've paid and who you've paid and how much you still owe so that you just don't lose track of any outstanding money. There's a lot to think about when you're planning for a wedding. There's a lot that goes into the budget, but as long as you're careful with yourself and you don't go too crazy and you just set those expectations and stick to them, it's going to be fine. So just remember that no matter how hard you try to make things perfect, that something still might go wrong, but the most important thing at the end of the day is that you got married.